Rain was already falling sideways when James bolted from the cafe's cracked wooden door, umbrella in one hand, apron soaked, shoes squishing with each step on the crooked pavement. His shift had ended an hour ago, but the old manager, Mr. Daler, refused to let anyone leave until the last customer did. James didn't argue. He never did. Not when he was yelled at for being too slow, not when customers sneered at his accent, not even when he had to split his tips with Daler's nephew who did nothing but stare at his phone in the corner. Because rent didn't wait for dreams. He zipped his hoodie all the way up and started toward the bus stop, until he saw her. She stood alone under the cracked shelter by the curb, drenched, bare arms wrapped around herself, a plastic grocery bag slipping from her hand. And something about her wasn't right. She didn't belong there. Not just because her heels looked like they cost more than his month's salary, or her black dress clung too perfectly to a figure sculpted by something more than just good genetics, but because her eyes weren't scanning for a ride. They were looking at the street like it had betrayed her. She looked lost, and James's feet paused. For once, he didn't think about how late it was, how soaked his only pair of shoes already were, or how the cheap umbrella in his hand could barely keep him dry. He just walked up and said, "You all right, miss?" The woman didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, "I miss my car." Her voice was low, too steady, like someone trying not to cry in public. James offered the umbrella. "Take this. I've got a hoodie. You'll get sick." She stared at him like she hadn't heard that kind of kindness in years. Then she asked, "You're giving me your umbrella?" He nodded. "It's just rain. You look like you've got more important places to be than me." She blinked, slowly. Then, without a word, she took it. Their fingers touched. Cold. Brief. She didn't thank him. Just turned and walked down the street, umbrella barely staying upright in the wind. James smiled a little and shook the water off his hoodie. He ran through puddles like a kid, laughing softly even though his bones ached from exhaustion. The next morning, he opened the cafe like usual. Same old creaky door. Same flickering light over the counter. Same cracked espresso machine that needed a smack to work. Until at 8:05 a.m. sharp, everything stopped. A black car glided to the curb like it owned the street. The kind of car James only saw in magazines left in waiting rooms. Its door opened, and she stepped out. Not soaked, not lost. This time, she wore confidence like silk, high heels clicking across the pavement, lips red, eyes locked forward like she was stepping into a courtroom. The cafe went dead silent. She walked past the stunned customers and stood in front of the register. Looked James dead in the eyes. "I want to speak to the owner." Dela hurried out from the back, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. "Yes, ma'am. Welcome, welcome. What can I get you?" She didn't look at him. She pointed at James. "Him. He's the reason I'm here. You should be paying him to run this place." James's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Daler chuckled nervously. "Ma'am, he's just a server." "He's..." The woman pulled out a folder, placed it on the counter like a judge delivering a verdict. "I just bought your cafe." Silence collapsed over the cafe like thunder. James blinked. Dela laughed. "Excuse me? You bought my cafe." The woman didn't smile. "As of this morning, the deed was transferred. It's mine now. You can call your lawyer." She turned to James. "And you. I owe you something I haven't owed anyone in a long time. A proper thank you." James stammered. "Miss, I think it might be. Maybe this is." She cut him off gently. "You gave me your umbrella in the rain. No questions. No hesitation. That night, I'd been stranded after walking out on a party filled with people who only cared about my money. I was soaked, humiliated, and invisible. And then, you showed up. Like the last good man left in the city. He could feel every eye on him. He had never even been the center of attention on his birthday." She turned to the rest of the stunned customers and staff. "My name's Ava. You may know the last name from Holdings, or our latest deal with Zerotech." Gasps followed. Ava didn't flinch. "This man right here," she said, nodding to James, "treated me with more dignity, while working a double shift in the rain, than some of my own board members have in 10 years. Daler paled. "Which is why," she said, voice crisp, "he's no longer a waiter. Starting today, he's the new manager. And once he's trained, I'm putting him in charge of franchise expansion." She paused. "With a profit share." The world tilted beneath James's feet. Daler burst out. "You can't do that. This is my..." Ava turned to him. You can either stay on in a reduced capacity as support staff, or you can leave today. I don't care about your name being on the menu. That name's being replaced. James's throat was dry. He wanted to speak, but nothing came. So she leaned toward him and whispered, "Do you trust me?" He finally nodded. She smiled. And just like that, Ava turned to the shocked cafe crowd and said, "Coffee's free today," in honor of the man who remembered how to be human when no one else did. Someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole cafe broke into scattered applause, hesitant at first, but growing with every second. James looked around, dazed. Some regulars grinned at him like they'd always believed in him. Others looked stunned. But no one looked down on him now. Ava motioned to the private back office. "Come on. We've got paperwork to sign. And you've got a future to build." Inside the office, James sat across from her, still clutching his apron like a shield. "Why are you doing this?" he finally asked. "People help others all the time. Doesn't mean they deserve this." Ava crossed her legs. Her tone softened. "You didn't help me because you knew who I was. You didn't try to impress me. You didn't flirt. You didn't expect anything. You just saw a soaked woman and helped." She paused. "When I left that party, I was questioning everything. The company I inherited, the fake friendships, the legacy I was upholding. I needed to see if there were still people in the world who'd act without agenda." Her eyes met his. "You passed a test you didn't even know you were taking." James shook his head. "But I'm not a manager. I've never even." She raised a brow. "Did you memorize every customer's order here?" "Yes." "Fix the espresso machine every week?" "Yes." "Train the new kids because your boss was too busy yelling?" He nodded again. "Then you've been managing, just without the title. Or respect. Let's change that." A lump formed in James's throat. He leaned back. Let sink in. And for the first time in years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, life was about to give him a chance. But of course, not everyone wanted him to succeed. And not everyone in the cafe was clapping for the right reasons. Someone else was watching from the shadows. And they were not smiling. The cafe buzzed louder than a street market that week. Phones were out. Pictures of Ava and James together went viral locally. "From waiter to manager overnight" was the headline on half a dozen cheap blogs. TikToks were made. Customers swarmed the place just for a glimpse of the umbrella guy. But not all smiles were genuine. Behind the counter, Liam, the nephew of old manager Daler, stirred cold coffee with a scowl. He'd always thought of himself as the heir to this place. He didn't do much, but his uncle owned it. That was enough, right? Until this, nobody showed up with wet hair, cheap shoes, and a backbone, and ruined everything. James noticed, but he didn't care. He had work. From deep cleaning forgotten shelves to designing a new menu board, James threw himself into every task like it was his last chance at redemption. He'd never had this kind of platform before. He wasn't about to waste it. Ava checked in daily, but never hovered. She let him stumble, but never fall. "You're allowed to mess up," she told him once, when he underordered beans. "Just don't hide it." That's how we stay honest. Still, beneath the success, a whisper crept in. He noticed the regulars who used to joke with him now kept their distance. Not unkindly, just unsure, as if he'd changed, become too much. And then there were the messages. One morning, taped to the inside of the supply cabinet. "We all know you're not built for this." The writing was crude, anonymous. James didn't show Ava. Instead, he worked harder, until he collapsed. Literally. One night, after hours, he fainted from exhaustion behind the counter. Ava got the call from the emergency contact form. She was there in 10 minutes. At the clinic, James apologized before he could even sit up. "Sorry. I didn't pace myself. I thought I could prove." She cut him off, gently. "James, you don't need to prove anything. You already did. But people are watching me," he whispered. "Some are waiting for me to fail." She nodded. "They are. But you're not doing this for them, remember? You're doing it for the kid who stood in the rain and handed over his umbrella. That kid deserves this." He laughed faintly. "You talk like you know me better than I do." She tilted her head. "Maybe I do." And then, for the first time, something shifted. Her hand brushed his. She didn't pull away. But the moment didn't last. Because the next morning, something happened. The register was gone. Cash drawer, emptied. Security camera, unplugged. The place was robbed. And the only person with a key? James. The police didn't waste time. Neither did the whispers. By 8 a.m., word had spread that the cafe had been cleaned out overnight, and James was the only one with full access. Dayla was back that morning, conveniently, standing outside the cafe, smirking like a man who just saw his rival slip. Didn't take long. Huh, he said, sipping his tea. Some folks aren't meant for responsibility. James stood frozen as officers examined the back door, dusted the register for prints. He felt like a ghost in his own story. Ava arrived in black coat, heels, eyes sharp enough to cut. One look at the broken security camera, and the force of her presence froze the room. She asked no one in particular. Was it an inside job? A junior officer hesitated. We're still checking footage from the street, ma'am. But there were no signs of forced entry. Daler muttered. He always had the key. Always closed last. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Ava's eyes flicked to James. And for the first time, she said nothing. James's chest went tight. You don't believe I didn't say that, she said. But she didn't say she believed him either. And that silence hit harder than the accusation. They shut down the cafe for 2 days. Longest 2 days of James's life. No calls from Ava. No customers asking after him. Just silence and the weight of being the story. Not the hero of it, the cautionary tale. He couldn't eat. He barely slept. The umbrella he'd once given away now hung in his room, a reminder of how quickly you could go from being applauded to being accused. And then, 2 days later, something strange happened. A little girl came to his doorstep with a note. Her voice was tiny. A lady told me to give you this. Said you need to see the truth. The note had an address. No signature. It led him to a parking garage downtown. He stood in the shadows of concrete pillars, heart pounding, until he saw the man, Liam, with a crowbar in his hand, tossing something into a dumpster. James's heart sank. He crept closer. Behind a stack of boxes, half smashed, the register. And just above it, the unplugged security cam, still intact, and blinking red. Recording. James stepped out. Funny time for spring cleaning. Liam froze. Did you think I'd just disappear? James asked, voice low. You set me up? Liam stuttered. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I just wanted you out. You made me look like a fool. James stepped forward. No, you did that yourself. He picked up the security cam, pocketed it. Thank for the evidence. Liam lunged. Too late. A voice called out from the stairwell. Police. Drop it. Ava stood behind the officers. Hands crossed. Expression cold. I had a feeling, she said. So I followed the no trail. Turns out, kindness has eyes everywhere. An hour later, Liam was in cuffs. James stood beside Ava in the alley, shaking. You believe me, he whispered. She stepped closer. I never stopped. But believing and proving are two different things. And you just proved yourself again. He looked at her, eyes burning. I was ready to walk away. I thought maybe I wasn't built for this. Ava touched his chest, softly. But this is why you are. You get up, no matter who tries to bury you. And then she pulled him into a quiet hug. A storm of emotions swirled in silence. Come back, she said. We've got work to do. And I'm tired of coffee that doesn't taste like your grind. The next morning, the cafe reopened with a new sign out front. James's Corner. Brewed with purpose. Ava had insisted on the name. James fought her on it, but she just smiled and said, sometimes people need to see what second chances taste like. Customers lined up around the block. Not because of curiosity now. Because of respect. They came for the man who had once handed a stranger his only umbrella, who had been framed, broken, and nearly buried, but never lost the dignity in his silence or the warmth in his actions. Inside, the cafe didn't just look new. It felt different. Sunlight pooled through clean windows. Shelves were stacked with handmade mugs from local artists. A tiny bulletin board read, leave a note. Leave kindness. Pick one if you need it. James placed the first message himself. If you're standing in the rain right now, someone will walk by. Hang in there. By noon, there were already 10 more notes below it. Ava walked in during the lunch rush, in a casual blazer and sneakers. No guards. No car. Just her. She ordered a simple black coffee and took the stool at the end of the counter. James smiled as he slid her cup over. You don't usually come in this quiet. She grinned. I'm not here as a CEO today. I'm just a customer. He nodded. And I'm not just a waiter anymore. No, she said gently. You're a builder. There was a pause between them. Charged. Honest. And then she asked, quieter now, "Do you ever regret that night? Giving up your umbrella?" He looked out the window. It had just started to rain again. But this time, people were laughing in it. "No," he said, "because I didn't lose anything. I gained everything." Ava sipped. "And if I hadn't come back the next morning?" James turned to her. His voice was soft, but strong. "Then I'd still be here. Trying. Showing up. It was never about what I'd get back." And in that moment, it was clear. This wasn't a story about luck. It was a story about quiet strength, about giving when you have little, standing when no one claps, and rising even when the world tells you not to. Behind them, someone put coins in the tip jar. A teenager with dripping hair looked up at James. "Are you the guy from the video?" James smiled. "Just a guy who makes good coffee." The boy looked impressed. "My dad said you were framed and still came back." "That's sick." James nodded. "Tell your dad we've got a warm seat waiting." Ava leaned over, whispering, "You're changing people now." And just before she stood to leave, she added one last thing. "I came back the next morning for a reason, not just to return a favor. I wanted to see if the man I saw in the rain was real." She touched his hand once more, then left, and the bell above the cafe door jingled softly, like applause meant only for him. As the rain continued outside, James went to the window, held up a new umbrella, and handed it to a soaked customer on the steps. No cameras this time, no reward, just kindness, passed on, because that was always the real story.